Hello, it is me, Vega. You probably recognize my beautiful robot voice from the American Medical Association video guide. Well, you will be hearing it again. I will be your video guide on the Supreme Court case, Korematsu v. United States. During World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt issued an executive order granting the U.S. military the power to ban thousands of American citizens of Japanese ancestry from places that seemed to be critical to domestic security. After being granted this power, the military exercised the power even more by issuing an order banning all persons of Japanese ancestry, both alien and non-alien except for a designated coastal area which stretched from Washington state to southern Arizona. Internment camps to hold the Japanese Americans were created in this area, and Japanese Americans were held there for the duration of the war. A man by the name of Fred Korematsu, an American-born citizen of Japanese descent, went against the executive order and refused to leave his home in San Leandro, California. He was convicted, and he then appealed to the courts. His case reached the Supreme Court in 1944. The court was being called upon to interpret the personal rights as specified by the Fifth Amendment in the Constitution. This amendment in the Bill of Rights states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Korematsu argued that he was being deprived of his right to live freely without the appropriate legal process. The legal question to keep in mind is, did the President and Congress go beyond their war powers by implementing exclusion and restricting the rights of Americans of Japanese descent? In this case, the court sided with the government and held that Korematsu's rights were outweighed by the need to protect against espionage. During circumstances of emergency and peril, Justice Black argued that compulsory exclusion, though constitutionally suspect, is justified. The vote was a 6-3 for the United States. Justice Hugo L. Black wrote the majority opinion, and he held that not all racial restrictions are inherently unconstitutional. In defending the general public, it becomes a public necessity, and what is being done may sometimes justify the existence of such restrictions. However, Justice Black also makes a point that racial antagonism can never justify the restrictions. All three justices who voted against, Justice Robert Jackson, Justice Owen Roberts, and Justice Frank Murphy, had dissented in this case. Justice Jackson argued that the nation's wartime security concerns should not be a reason to strip people, whom are also American citizens, of their constitutionally protected civil rights. However, later on in his dissent, Jackson pointed out that over anything, in times of war, the military would maintain the power to arrest citizens because the judicial branch has no executive power. Though, he still believed that the court should not have justified the military's actions, and he believed that the majority decision attacked liberty more than the order did. Justice Owen Roberts argued that the new designated area for the Japanese Americans was equal to that of a prison. Justice Frank Murphy criticized not only the military order, but also the majority for supporting actions that develop racial prejudices against the Japanese Americans. Overall, the decision in Korematsu v. United States was definitely not one of the best decisions made by the Supreme Court. American citizens were stripped of their civil rights just for being a certain ancestry descent. A similar decision was made in a previous case, Hirabayashi v. United States, and the court ruled that the government order was not based on racial prejudice, but based on the fear of an incident similar to Pearl Harbor. With both Hirabayashi v. United States and Korematsu v. United States, it was implied that the executive orders and the military's power were constitutional, and they could alienate people if he or she were a threat to national security. Thankfully, in 1983, Congress declared that the court's decision had been overruled in the Court of History, and in the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, there was a formal apology directed towards the Japanese Americans held in internment camps during the war. Though, in Justice Jackson's dissent, we are reminded of how difficult it is for the courts during times of war when they are assessing claimed violations of constitutional rights.